everybody, I'm here to talk about asteroids in astrology, particularly in birth charts. So I don't know if you're watching this how aware you are of birth charts or not, but basically the birth chart is a picture of the sky the moment you were born. It looks like a wheel with 12 pieces of pie in it, and it has the zodiac signs all the way around the edge, and then it has all the planets distributed throughout that wheel, throughout the pieces of pie, so to speak. So most people know their sun sign. However, you also have a moon sign and a Venus sign and a Mercury sign, and all the planets are in various signs, and they all mean different things. But you might be hearing more talk if you're into astrology about asteroids. You might hear them peppered in with, various astrology articles, or people who talk about, the astrology weather for the week or things like that. And you may be thinking, what are these asteroids? I mean, you might know, I've heard of like Jupiter and Mars and all this stuff, but what are these asteroid things? So the asteroids, they were starting to discover these smaller planetary bodies. Most of the asteroids, they're in a belt between Mars and Saturn. But they started to discover them in the early part of the 19th century, so in the early 1800s. As telescopes and things were getting better, they started to discover these other bodies. So they started to discover them before they discovered Neptune and before they discovered Pluto, just to give you an idea. There are 5 major asteroids that you will hear talked about on a fairly regular basis by a lot of astrologers, although not every astrologer uses them. Some people see it as just another way to complicate your chart, but there's 5 of them that I tend to work with as well, because I think they kind of round out the chart a little bit and can give you a little more information. I mean, birth charts can give you a lot of information. Certainly. And you don't need to have asteroids in your birth chart to, have a proper birth chart reading. In birth charts, I always put in Chiron. And Chiron is actually technically, I think, a dwarf planet. But Chiron you'll see most commonly talked about by astrologers. And Chiron is the wounded healer. So in Greek mythology, Chiron was a centaur that had medicinal knowledge, but he was struck in one of his legs by a poison arrow. But because he was immortal and couldn't die, he was just in pain all the time. And so he ended up, Zeus put him in the sky, and that's where we get the constellation of Sagittarius. But Chiron, he's considered the wounded healer. And so when he shows up in a chart, he shows you where you are wounded, but also where you can heal others. This is where you can grow and heal the most. So he is put into charts fairly commonly. Now, he was not discovered until the 1970s, I believe. And often when asteroids or planetary bodies are discovered, tells us a little bit about what they mean. So for example, Neptune was discovered in the 1880s, I believe it was. No, earlier. It was the 1840s, I think. It was right around the invention of photography. And so he obviously, rules things because his name is Neptune, like the ocean and waters and things, but he also rules things like photography, the image, vision, deception, things like that. Pluto was discovered in the 1930s, and he's associated with nuclear power, with things like power that destroys, also with death, of course, because it's Pluto, the god of the underworld. So, bit of a tangent, but back to Chiron. It was discovered in the 1970s, and this goes big with like the self-help movement, people doing a lot of, deep psychological work and things like that. So he's associated with kind of that coming awake sort of vibe with the New Age movement as well. And so he's associated with healing a lot. So you'll see him in most birth charts, and I do include him in like regular type of birth charts. But I wanted to talk about the 4 asteroids the 4 feminine asteroids that you will most commonly see talked about. Now, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of asteroids. You could not include them all in a chart. They are still finding some. But these 4 are kind of the most common ones that you will see. And so the first one was Ceres, and she was discovered in the early 1800s. And so Ceres is the Roman name for the Greek god Demeter. She is an earth goddess. She is a goddess of grain and cereals. And if you think about it, the primary role of women back in the 1800s was as a mother, of course. And so Ceres is associated with mothering. And around the time, it was also like the time of the Industrial Revolution. And what you had was people, especially men, leaving their homes to work in a factory and then coming back, and so leaving women with most of with the child care. Now, of course, we know women traditionally have been the child care providers, but if you're working on a farm, if you're living on a farm or you're living above your own shop or something, the whole family was kind of evolved. And now we have this change going on in this society where the home sphere and the work sphere became separate. So Ceres shows in a chart where you nurture yourself. She's associated with agriculture, with nutrition, and with mothering. And so where she shows up in a chart shows where you need nurturing, what your nurturing style is by the sign that she's in, how you want to receive nurturing, and also how you give nurturing as well. People with prominent Ceres in their charts may have had a strong relationship with their mother. They may also strongly be involved in the food business or the agricultural business or nutrition and health. So there's a lot of aspects with Ceres that have to do with those things. The next asteroid that we have is Juno. The next three were discovered somewhere within the 1800s, and they really have to do with women's sort of changing roles and perceptions within society. So Juno, which is the Roman name for Hera, is the queen of the gods, and she has to do with women as partners. And so there was a change sort of in Victorian society where it became more and more common to marry for love. Certainly it's not saying that didn't happen before. People certainly did, but there was much more emphasis put on not so much things like property and, good business deals or will this person survive the plague kind of thing, onto romance and into, is this person a good romantic partner for me? So where Juno shows up in a chart is she shows us what our soulmate is like, who our best marriage partners are. So whereas Venus shows us where we want to be romanced and Mars shows us our, what we like in the bedroom, Juno says, what is the best kind of partnership for me? Who is going to be my best partner in a long-term romantic relationship? So she shows you the sign she's in, what kind of style you like, how you partner and what kind of partner you like, and where she's in your chart can indicate where you meet that person. Also, it can indicate, what the emphasis of your relationship is on. The next one we're going to talk about is Vesta. Now, Vesta was discovered again in the 1800s and around the time when spiritualism was becoming a really big thing. Spiritualism is a movement where people believe that there was an afterlife and that they could talk to dead people. There was mediums, became very popular, as well as like spirit boards and seances and all of that kind of stuff. And really that's kind of the core of where the New Age movement started. Now, Vesta is the goddess of home and hearth, also known as Hestia in Greek mythology, but she is a priestess. So as much as she is about the home, and again, we saw that change in the 1800s where because of the Industrial Revolution, more and more women were confined to the home. She's also about spirituality because the spiritualist movement opened up opportunities for women to have a career in those areas. Also in spiritualism, women were highly respected and, it gave women this outlet and these career options that they didn't have before. So Vesta is really associated with our spirituality, what we're devoted to, and also it's to a certain extent sexuality as well. It's like our own personal sexuality belonging to us. It's not about it belonging to others, belonging to men in particular. It's about us owning our own sexuality. So where she shows up in your chart, can show you things like, what you're devoted to, what kind of like household style you have for decorating. But she's very much about spirituality. So what kind of spirituality do you like? How do you like to express that spirituality? Where do you express spirituality in your life? And somebody with prominent Vesta is somebody that's probably quite spiritual, or who's involved in, the New Age, or in psychic, has psychic abilities, or somebody who's, prominently in the occult. That kind of thing can show a really strong Vesta. The other one is Athena. Now, Athena, Pallas Athena, she's often referred to as. Athena's like the career woman. And, in the 1800s, universities started to open up to women in the late 1800s. You also had more women moving into the workforce. She's definitely the asteroid of feminism. And she's certainly like about, women, we have power, we can go out there and get things done. But she's also about strategy as well. So while as Mercury is about our thoughts and our style of thinking and our intelligence, Athena is about how we strategize things. How do we plan for the future? She's also like how we defend ourselves as well, because people forget she's also a war goddess. She's not an attacker though. She is a defender. So where she shows up in your chart shows you how you strategize, how you defend yourself. She also can show you some of your career ideas as well. She shows you where you're independent of others, where you can do your own thing. And so she's like the strong lady of the chart for sure. So like I said, there's other asteroids you'll hear people talk about as well. You'll hear people talk about Hygeia, who is associated with medicine, and she's often quite prominent in charts of people involved in the medical field. She can indicate, some health issues for us. There's also Sappho, which can show us our relationship with those of the same gender. There's Psyche as well, which can show us some of our psychological issues. Another one people talk about is Sedna, which is actually named after an Inuit goddess, which can show us where we feel victimized. And then she's not really a asteroid. She's more like a dwarf planet that's past Pluto, and her name is Eris, and she moves like incredibly slowly. And Eris shows up in our chart where we cause trouble. So you can see how like you can really layer a chart with or reading what's going on in the sky right now with the asteroids. So just, right now we have Ceres is in Pisces, which shows us that we really need to nurture ourselves on a spiritual level, on an emotional level, and creatively. Athena is in Aquarius, and so she's showing us that we need to really strategize how we're using things like social media and technology. Vesta is in Taurus, showing us that we need to look after the earth on a spiritual level. We need to connect with the earth and really see it as a spiritual being. And then we have, who's next? We have Ceres, Athena, Juno. Juno's in Libra, showing us partnerships. We need to partner with others on an equal basis. Equality is super important. And I think right now with a lot of people staying home, they're finding that, childcare, you have to be an equal partnership to make it work with people working at home. So you can see how they give like sort of subtle nuances to readings about what's going on now and in your own chart. So I encourage you to go and look up what your signs are, what your asteroid signs are. Look up your 4 major ones in Chiron. Look up Athena, Athena, Juno, Ceres, and Vesta, as well as Chiron, because those are the major ones. You can look at the others as well, Curiosity. I think the best site for this is astro.com. You can look up other planetary bodies on there and type those in, and you will find them. I am offering, just so you know, on my Etsy shop for the month of June. So starting in June, all the way through to the end of June, I'm going to be offering asteroid readings for 50% off. So right now they are $100, but this month they're going to be $50 that you get a asteroid reading. So this doesn't include your other planets. It's strictly your asteroids, but that's something I'm going to be offering, as well as an add-on, because right now my birth charts, you'd have to purchase the birth chart and the asteroid chart separately. But if you want a birth chart with asteroids, again, it's only going to be $50 extra instead of $100 extra. So I'm doing that for the month of June if you're interested. Otherwise, just go and look it up yourself and see what you think about them. Anyway, thank you again to all of my patrons. You guys are amazing and awesome. Big shout out to Marie, Nathan, and Jamie as well. I appreciate so much. Sorry about that. I just had to yawn for a second. Anyway, I love all you guys, and as always, peace and love and rock and roll.